Hello and welcome to a brand new Arseblog Arsecast right here on arseblog.com. How are you? Hope you're well. Thank you very much indeed, as always, for being here. Hope you've had a good week, basking in the glow of the North London derby and not being stressed out and freaked out and worried and anything else by the midweek football, because there hasn't been any midweek football for the first time in quite a long time. And I have to say, it's been good. It's been good. There's been so much football, so much talking, so much analysis, so much to debate and discuss. To have a week of nothing has been quite pleasant indeed, because I don't think, apart from the interlull, which is, why am I speaking like this? I have no idea. I just meant to say which is. The interlull, which is taking place in March, is probably the last time we'll get to just decompress, because all going well, and hopefully all does go well, is going to be mad after that. Mad. Just the run in to May, to the end of the Premier League season, with the FA Cup still running, and of course, the interlull begins after the Carabao Cup final, so we could go into that one feeling pretty damn good, or, not, but I don't really want to consider that alternative at this moment in time. Anyway, I do hope you've had a good, nice, quiet week, recharging the batteries for the weekend and beyond. And for today's show, we're going to cover a lot of topics delivered to us in the form of statements. It's our statements format podcast, which my guest has to either strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree with the statements that I'm going to put to them. And with me to do that this morning is Tim Stillman. Good morning, Tim.
Good morning.
How are you feeling this week? Is kind of quiet, isn't it? Because it's unusually quiet. When you do what we're lucky enough to be able to do, it's been pretty hectic. So to have like a quiet week, particularly after a great result, is nice. It's welcome.
It's really nice. Yeah, it reminds me of that tweet from that kind of centrist journalist in the UK when Keir Starmer's Labour came into power, and he tweeted something like, "It's nice, isn't it, the quiet?" which has been somewhat pilloried ever since, it must be said.
Well, those are some famous last words.
Yeah. But absolutely. Like, writing the weekly column on a Thursday I say it's so much more difficult, but there is a midweek game every single midweek. So I am usually scrambling to write it on a Thursday morning because it has to be dictated by events. Last week, I couldn't write something before the Wolves game because obviously the Wolves game becomes very, very important. Whereas this week, I think I wrote it on Monday, which is lovely. But yeah, it's been a nice kind of week of basking, really. And in fact, in some ways, I feel like it's almost been too quiet. I've got that kind of fear, that anxiety that we're beginning to take walloping Tottenham for granted, and that we perhaps shouldn't do that.
Okay, well, that brings us nicely to our first statement, which have been provided by our wonderful Patreon members on Patreon and also on the Discord. And the first one, and just remember, these aren't necessarily firmly held beliefs. They're statements to spark discussion and debate between the two of us, and maybe in the comment section as well. But Kirk Winstanley says, "We, Arsenal fans, are over-indexing the North London derby win, which had margins that went our way and was against a world-class piece of shite."
What are the potential answers? It's like strongly agree, disagree.
Strongly disagree.
Option?
No, there's no middle option. There's no fence sitting here. I had to get rid of that because Clive would always pick that one when he came on.
Yeah, and actually that's what you should do in surveys. You should have 4 options, not 5, because people go for the middle one. This is one I can't answer at the moment. I don't necessarily disagree. I think so often in a season you get results where you don't quite know for a few games. Like, you don't know whether you've turned a corner for better or for worse, or whether it was just like a one-off game or some circumstances that happened in a game. And actually that brings me to what I've written about in the column this week, which is basically kind of saying this has to be one of those results you get in a title winning season that just picks everything up a little bit. So I think I would say tactically, shall we say, I agree close to strongly agree, because I think Tottenham, what on earth they were doing, I don't know, because they just played in exactly the same way that they played in the game in November.
The first one, yeah.
I do not, and I'm glad they did, but I do not understand why they did that at all. They got a new manager, and it was like, yeah, I've watched the first North London derby back. Should we do that again?
Did he watch it, though? I mean, that's the question I might have is, did he actually watch that? Because if he did and he did that, then...
they're in some trouble.
If Spurs fans are worried already, they'll be even more so.
So tactically, I think that's true. I don't think this game is likely to repeat. I think you get teams at good times and bad times sometimes. Manchester United, for example, we got them at the worst time at home. We'd played them a month earlier under Ruben Amorim. I'm convinced we win 2 or 3-0.
Sure.
So yeah, and you know, as if the Premier League needed it. Even if Igor Tudor didn't watch, I think a lot of Premier League managers will be watching and saying, "Don't do this, guys."
Yeah,
whatever you do. But I think the win has to have some psychological value. It has to have something beyond the 3 points on the board, and time will tell whether that's the case.
I mean, I think every team, and every Arsenal team I can remember that has won the league has had what you might call like a blip or a run of games which haven't been optimal in terms of results. You mentioned the Man United game we lost in January, and then we haven't lost a game since. But at times it's felt like the sky has been falling, hasn't it?
Well, this is something I put in the column this week, actually, is weirdly, this season's been defined by a response to defeats. So after Liverpool, we didn't lose for 12 games, I think. After Villa, we won 5 in a row. And that's quite a peculiar thing for a title-challenging team to do. Usually, it's like, there's a big victory. Like I think Newcastle away, right, in September. That, to me, felt like a big boost of victory that gave us some confidence and set us on our way for 5 or 6 games. Whereas, actually, a lot of this season's felt more like response to defeat. Whereas what this has to be for me, this has to be, right, okay, we've had our wobble, we've had the nerves and the fear and all of that. Like that's got to be consigned to the past now.
Yeah. I mean, 3 defeats all season. That's the thing, you know. And I think it was actually 7 in a row. If you include the Crystal Palace win in the Carabao Cup, it was 7 wins in a row in all competitions after that defeat to Villa in December. So what I'm trying to say in a half-arsed way is that the blips that we've had this season have been probably less blippy than in other seasons. They've been blippier blips, if that's the right way to put it, you know. But with regards to the Spurs game, I completely get where that's coming from, because they were terrible and they are terrible, and they're potentially so terrible they could get relegated, which is obviously hilarious.
Very funny.
Yeah, very, very funny, and would be very, very funny. And I don't, as we said in the Arsecast extra the other day, I wouldn't miss them at all if they went down, because they'll be back at some point. But, just to see them endure that would be glorious.
I actually listened to A View from the Lane for the first, and I'm sure only time ever, which is the Athletics Tottenham podcast. And it was such great listening. At the end, they had an earnest discussion about, because they've announced their season ticket prices for next season and they've frozen them. And they had like a very earnest discussion about what happens if we get relegated. They can't charge those prices. Like, how are they going to deal with that? And it was, I thoroughly recommended listening.
Okay.
Easy listening.
All right. If anyone wants to put themselves through that, it comes with Tim's recommendation. All right. This one comes from, I think it's Pete on the Discord, I think. And they say new signings like Gyokeres and Eze are gelling into the team and hitting form at a normal pace. Zubimendi's immediate impact in form is the exception, not the rule.
I slightly disagree there. It's different for everyone. So I'm thinking about like Mikel Arteta's signings so far. So Raya, yeah, maybe that took a few months. Havertz, yeah, maybe that took a few months. But then I look at like Ben White, Declan Rice, Trossard, players like that. Gabriel, Saliba. I mean, I know Saliba went on loan for a couple of years.
There was a process,
when he came back in. I'm looking at a lot of those guys and I'm thinking they hit the ground running pretty much straight away. But then I look at someone like Hincapié. I wasn't, not that I was unimpressed, but I was kind of thinking, is this worth spending loads of money on? Last couple of games, that's begun to change. I think he's beginning to settle in. So obviously it's different for different players. I think it's different for attackers as well, because there's more change there. I think it's kind of somehow easier to come into the back half of the team, particularly when it's as good as Arsenal's. So I slightly disagree. I also think with Eze and Gyokeres, I go back to the first question on that. I think there's still, we go so from game to game, don't we? Because Gyokeres, away at Wolves and away at Brentford, I couldn't find him. He needed high vis or something because I didn't see him in those games. I think he was genuinely pretty awful. But then he was amazing against Spurs. And again, I feel like I need to wait for a few games before definitely proclaiming that Gyokeres has got it. Same with Eze. Like Eze now, the question is, can you perform against someone other than Tottenham? And I'm not rushing to judgment on those things yet. So I'm not quite there yet with Eze and Gyokeres that they're definitely a success now. But I think it's fair enough to say there is evidence of signings that take roughly this long to settle into the team, particularly in a team like Arsenal, where now we have so many attackers and they're swapping so often that it probably is going to take a little bit longer.
Yeah, I think I would slightly disagree with this as well, because another aspect of it is maybe the age of these players, that they're bought as oven-ready players, right? Eberechi has plenty of experience in the Premier League, 27 years of age when he arrives. Victor Gyokeres, perhaps part of the reason we went for him over Benjamin Sesko is the fact that he was 27. He had that experience. He played, in the Champions League with Sporting, and this idea that Arsenal needed players who are ready for now, I think is part of why we signed them. And I do think it's perfectly normal for players to take some time to adapt to a team. I suppose the thing you'd say about Gyokeres, and I agree with you, there have been games where he just hasn't been there, but he's also got 10 goals in his last 12 games, which is very decent going. So if you're looking at it with your glass half full, you're saying, okay, he's finding his stride more often than not, but there are games. I think the thing with Gyokeres is that when he's bad, he's like really quite bad or invisible or just not involved enough. But then he scores the goals and he does what he does against Tottenham, which was obviously really, really impressive. And the 2 goals he scored against Tottenham were really encouraging, right? That's kind of what you were expecting from Gyokeres from
There's
day one.
There's one thing he does well, basically.
Yeah, that's it.
And it's the most important thing. I think also, I think what's interesting with the conversation about Gyokeres is I think there's an extent to which a lot of commentators got something a bit wrong in terms of Arsenal just need a striker to score goals. And I understand that. I understand that sentiment. But then to dismiss all the other stuff that the striker needs to do at the same time, I just don't think the idea is right that you need a guy up front who does nothing but score goals. I think how the centre forward plays is still pretty influential and pretty important. And so what we've got here, I think, is Gyokeres doesn't, how can I put this delicately? He's not a great footballer, but he's really good at smashing the ball into the net. So like his performances usually are not that great, but I can't think of many sitters he's missed. Like when he does get in front of goal, he looks very clinical. Like he's got that kind of Harry Kane thing, I think, where it's like when the ball's on my right foot, bang, I am smashing it into the corner and there's nothing you can do about it. So, I think there's our expectations were maybe a little bit out of whack for what this player needed to be.
Yeah. I think maybe another aspect of his performance against Spurs that was encouraging was the fact that his all-round game was better than in probably any other game that he's played. I mean, just while we're on him, there are loads of questions about, or statements, I should say, about Gyokeres. Quasiland says, Gyokeres gets more than 25 goals this season. Dirty Verdi, Gyokeres will finish with 25 plus goals in all competitions. He's currently on 15. He could.
He'll probably get into that ballpark if he stays fit, to be absolutely fair to him. I'd maybe predict something like 22, 23. So I'd go with a slightly disagree. However, it wouldn't massively surprise me if he did, particularly if Arsenal start to get a few penalties as well. And I'd
imagine.
Well, indeed. But I kind of fancy him as our penalty taker, really, to be honest. Like if he was on the pitch and one was given, I think I'd want him to take it. So, he very, very well could do. I think what we're kind of discovering about this player and what Arteta started to discover is we need to get bodies around him a bit more. And that's where we've, quote unquote, failed him, maybe, and where he started to score more. Mm-hmm. First of all, when Havertz was near him, and, when Ezza's been near him and next to him. I think we saw that away at Newcastle as well earlier in the season. Ezza played that position, and they both played really well in that game. And I think that's probably what the manager's discovered, is that we can't leave him on his own. And, because sometimes as well, his touch is occasionally genuinely awful, but that's almost like you can almost make a counter pressure out of that. Like if the ball bounces off him a bit, if there's someone 5 yards away from him, they can pick it up and there can be like a little bit of chaos there. So one thing's for sure, we need this player. Yeah. And he's going to be important, whatever our eyes or our aesthetics tell us.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think we can see that Gabriel Jesus is capable of contributing, but probably impacted by the injury, the big injury that he actually, listen, you got to go back to 2022 to that first knee injury where he hasn't really been right since, has he? He never recaptured that kind of form and fluency. And Kai Havertz, we don't quite know what sort of a role he's capable of playing. So he is a very, very important player in what remains of this season, Victor Gyokeres. Okay, Snooner Gunner on the Discord says, the Carabao Cup final is the most important game in the run-in.
I'm going to slightly disagree there. I know where that's coming from, and I definitely agree that that's going to be an important game in the title race. Whatever happens in the Carabao Cup final will be framed around Arsenal and its impact on Arsenal. Nobody really cares what Man City do anyway, but nobody's going to care if Man City win the Carabao Cup, probably least of all Man City themselves. Like, look at their reaction to winning the semi-final. Pep went into the press conference. He complained about how far they had to travel to play in it, and he complained about one of his players being cup-tied. Like, it's really semi-relevant to them at most. It's like another notch on the bedpost.
And also where the final was going to be played, or we have to travel to London to play in the final. It's like, what the come on. Everyone knows Wembley is where it is.
Yeah. And so... whatever the fallout, it will be about what it means for Arsenal, for better or for worse. But I can't agree just because there is the game at the Etihad, which has actual league points riding on it. And I was thinking about this earlier, and I was thinking, like, obviously we don't know what position Arsenal are going to be in when we get there. I really hope that it's almost a mathematical irrelevance. Mm-hmm. But my feeling now is if we don't lose that game, we'll win the league. Just on the pure mathematics of it, not even on the psychological aspect.
Sure.
I kind of feel like unless bad stuff happens between now and then, which it could, I just feel like Man City have to win that game. And therefore, for me, that makes that probably the most important game in the running.
No, I know where the statement is coming from, but clearly for me, it is the league game at the Etihad, and I'm so curious. I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, but I'm so curious as to Arteta's approach. If it is a game that City have to win, how do we approach it? Do we make sure we don't lose? Does the fact that they have to win suit us in terms of how they might play and what kind of space they might leave and all that kind of stuff? So we're overdue a win there anyway. So I think it'll happen. So we'll wait and see. Okay, what about this one from Hallelujah Boy? And they say, Odegaard's role in the run-in will mainly be as a last 20-minute sub.
I disagree on that. I still think he's an incredibly important player for Arteta and Arsenal. I still think if the Champions League final was happening tomorrow and everyone was fit, I think Odegaard would start.
Yeah, I
absolutely
agree.
No doubt, ahead of Eze. What I would say is I hope we're getting to a kind of stage, I'm assuming for this season at least, but that Eze is just not considered an option for the left flank. And I think it's reasonable to question that and everything, but that just looks like what it's like. And therefore, we've essentially got a choice between Eze and Odegaard. And I hope what we see is a much clearer idea of which player suits which game. So Tottenham, where they give you loads of space on the edge of the area, Eze and Gyokeres, absolutely. But then I go back to a game like Everton away before Christmas, where the tactic was basically to have like 70% possession, no turnovers, no cheap free kicks, no throw-ins, just keep the ball on the floor and keep it away from Everton. You have to play Odegaard when it's like that. I definitely understand where the statement rather is coming from, in terms of I think Odegaard will play that role in some games in the run-in. I think about Wolves, for example, and, oh my God, it's gone to 2-1. We just need to shut this game down by playing 300,000 passes.
Keeping the ball, yeah.
Then yeah, definitely. I do also think there's maybe a question about do playmakers like Eze influence games from the bench, or do they have to be on for the whole for longer to really get the feel and the rhythm and the flow of the game? I'm not sure I've seen Eze be a convincing sub yet. But no, I still see Odegaard, if he's fit, starting the majority of games in that position.
Have you been, maybe surprised is not the right word, but the discourse around Martin Odegaard this season, I think, has been interesting. I don't think he's been anywhere near his best. I don't think he's really performed consistently since the big injury last season. I think there were reasons in the second half of last season why he wasn't as effective, because for a long time we didn't have any attackers, really. We had Marino up front, and Saka was out for a long time, et cetera, et cetera. So I think as a creative player, if you miss a proper striker, that has an impact. But this season, obviously impacted by injury again, the couple of shoulder injuries, the knee injury he just had, the other injury he got the other day, which I think are reasonable explanations as to why his game is not quite at its fluent best. But it's also felt to me like the frustration of how we play has centered around him more than any other player, even when we've played in a way that people might associate as frustrating when Odegaard is in the team. We've played that way without him in the team as well, that it's not just, well, when Odegaard's there, we're this, and when he's not there, we're this different thing. It's not unusual, I guess, for a player to become something of a lightning rod for fans, not just Arsenal fans. I think it happens with every team. But, how have you viewed that discourse around him? And, what are you looking for from him in this final part of the season? Fingers crossed he can stay fit, as a way of not changing people's minds, but reminding people that, he is a really, really, really good player who's not playing at his best, but, I think deserves, for me anyway, a little more grace than he gets from certain quarters. Yeah,
definitely. It's absolutely a worthwhile discussion. We've all got eyes. We can all see that he's not where he was perhaps in like 23, 24. I think there are quite a few things going on. I looked at it. I think him and Saka have started together 4 times this season or something like that. Like, that has an impact. That's one of like the best partnerships, right? That's got a bit of, I'm not equating it with this, but that's got a bit of Pires Henry about it, like you give those two a ball and you just let them get on with it, kind of thing. Does he have as good a relationship with Jurrien Timber as he did with Ben White? Not sure. The striker changes quite a lot. So we've got this kind of, sometimes it's Gyokeres, sometimes it's Jesus. They do totally and utterly different things. I think that's one of my reservations about our attack, is the divergence in profiles. Like, Eze and Odegaard, like the completely opposite players that completely change what you're doing. Same with the striker, 3 good striker options, but all totally and utterly different. And I think there's just been a lot of disruption in that area of the team. But at the same time, like, that is not to completely remove Odegaard's quote unquote responsibility. I do think he has been very in and out. He's had to come off in quite a lot of games. So I think he's lacked rhythm, and I'm seeing it elsewhere in the forward line. So I wrote about Saka last week. Same deal. Like, in and out of the team quite a lot. They're clearly looking after him. They're clearly being super cautious. Any, like, a muscle twitches and they take him out. And I kind of think it's similar with Odegaard. I think they're being really cautious and careful with him. And I think we see this a lot with Arteta, almost like an overcorrection. You know, it's like something goes wrong in one season, and the next season we go right to the other extreme.
Sure.
And so I think there's a fair bit of that going on. I think if Odegaard started 8 games in a row and Saka started 8 games in a row next to him, I think you'd probably... And we had, you know, let's say, I think Havertz is still Arsenal's best striker option, personally. If you got those 3 together for 7 or 8 games in a row, I think you'd start to see 23, 24 Martin Odegaard again. I don't think we'll get that, though, necessarily. So it remains a kind of a bit of an open question.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed. I suppose the other thing to say as well is that because he has the captain's armband, there is that extra bit of spotlight on him, which, you know, I'm sure he's aware of and fully accepts as well. Piers Moyles says...
Oh, you nearly said something I really didn't want to hear.
I know, yeah, exactly.
The last syllable, save that one.
Yeah, don't worry. We wouldn't debase ourselves in that way on this podcast. Anyway, they say Arsenal's drop points this season have been down to unfortunate mistakes and once-in-a-lifetime goals rather than any psychological frailties.
Disagree. I think those things are connected. I just think they've happened so many times. Don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean every single time it's happened it's been psychological frailty. But those 2 things have just happened so many times. I kind of think at some point you can't say it's unfortunate anymore. I think maybe we've got, in an otherwise brilliant goalkeeper, we've perhaps got an issue that of nature. His arms aren't long enough. Sometimes, like, you try and beat Raya from 3 or 4 yards, that's much harder than beating him from 30 yards, I think. So I think there is an element, and there's an element to which probably teams have worked that out. And there's also an element to which we don't really give up the penalty area because we're so good defensively. So teams kind of have to take shots from long range. And I do think, by the way, that is something we're going to see more and more in the Premier League. I think that's going to be the next, like, trend, as it were.
Shots from distance, from outside the area.
Yeah, a bit like set pieces, because the people talk about set pieces as a trend in the Premier League, and to me that's a response to another trend, which is mid and low blocks are just so good now, and teams are very well organised. Teams have got a lot of talent, and they stack it up behind the ball, and teams are very difficult to break down, and everyone is finding that across the league. So set pieces have become more prominent as a means of breaking games open. I think we'll see more shooting from range as well as part of that. So there's an element to which there probably is a little bit of misfortune, but no, I just think what's interesting when you look at the goals, even we've conceded in the last, let's say, 2 months, how many of those have been flowing moves where we've been ripped open? They're almost all bozo errors or long shots. I can't think of a team that properly breaks us down, you know, but at the same time, I think a lot of teams have started to say, and I think Tottenham were trying this on Sunday, kind of, and Chelsea tried it, I think, in the Carabao Cup semi-final second leg. They tried to do this kind of, let's just not concede anything. And, you know,
maybe Arsenal will, yeah, go on.
Yeah, get ready, everyone. He's about to do something stupid. You know, just wait for the nerves to kick in and they'll give you something, which I think is very different to what we saw a few months ago, where teams... I had a really interesting experience at Fulham away because I watched it in the home end. Okay. And it was so interesting being sat around Fulham fans watching us defend a 1-goal lead at that point. They were all like, this is over. We got no chance unless someone smashes it in from 30 yards.
Yeah.
Which, interestingly, Fulham then did a couple of months later against Liverpool.
That late goal, whatever, I can't remember the guy's name, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, I think teams are starting to kind of work out that's probably the best way you're going to get to score against Arsenal. So, no, I don't think it's unfortunate. Is
that a trend then that Arsenal need to take part in? Because it does feel, and I don't have the stats in front of me, and somebody could disprove this, it feels to me like we don't really take those shots as often as other teams. We don't score from outside the box. I can think of a couple, maybe Trossard against Sunderland and Zubamendi, yeah.
Sunderland as well.
Where we don't really pull the trigger from distance, that there's always the attempt or the thought to try and find somebody in a better position or work the ball into a better position. Like if set pieces are chaos, is there a need to maybe cause chaos with shots from distance? Like I get like the whole, people will say, well, this is a response. I think I was talking to Orbino about this on a podcast a while back, and it was in relation to how when stats in basketball came in and all of a sudden three-pointers started becoming more rare, and then it was a case of with football, okay, if you're going to hit it from outside the D, the XG on this is 0.003. So we're going to try and fashion a greater XG chance. And the influence of statistics on the way teams play might have been, I don't know if it properly stacks up or not. But I also wonder, if you are playing against low blocks a lot, is there an opportunity in, not going full Frank Lampard and deflecting it off 8 legs on the way through? But that fucking worked all right for him. And Chelsea were at that point a really dominant team against whom a lot of teams played quite defensively because of the attacking threat they had. Yeah,
and I don't watch as much NBA as I used to, but from what I understand, 3-pointers are back. That they're actually happening a lot, and this is the great thing about football. It's got a great way of self-correcting. So any kind of trend that comes up, someone comes up with something, and then everyone copies it. And it's the same with set pieces. Like, I look at set pieces, we're seen as the progenitor of that. I see Brentford as the real progenitor of that, and I think we kind of copied Brentford a little bit.
Do you think that, like that opening day of the season, remember when we had a load of players out with COVID and it was Ben White's debut, and I can't remember who started up front. It could have been Balogun or somebody. Yeah, Balogun started up front because half the team were out with COVID, and it was the Carragher and Neville dancing around on the pitch with the fans thing. I think it was Brentford's first game in the Premier League. Like I draw a direct line between that, the fact that we've hired a load of fucking guys who were at Brentford from the coaching staff there, and our focus on maximising set pieces, not just becoming a set piece team. But I think that was a sort of like, we have to be as good as we can be at everything, because this is how every other team is going to go. Like we spotted it early, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, I think that might have been Bernd Leno's last start before Ramsdale was signed as well. It's so interesting because, a lot of this kind of comes from StatsBomb, for example. And I remember Ted Knutson talking about this on Twitter years ago, talking about, like, why aren't teams maximising set pieces? And the analogy he used was, like, how much would you pay for a midfielder that gets 10 to 15 goals a season? Like, you can do that through being good at corners and stuff like that. So, but with the kind of the long shots thing, like, I think you're right that data and statistics will have had an impact there. And I think we shouldn't dismiss that. That's kind of right. But at the same time, there are unquantifiable aspects about taking shots from range. And again, shot selection, you can't just spam. You can't do a Felipe Coutinho and just smash it from 35 yards every time you get it. You've got to pick your moments. But if teams become aware that you are willing to do that, does it change the way they play a little bit? Does it just show a little bit of variety in the way that you attack? And those things are kind of unquantifiable, probably, by data certainly on publicly available data. So, yeah, and it's interesting. I think Art de Roche asked Arteta about that in a press conference before that Sunderland home game. And then we opened the scoring with Zubimendi shooting from the edge of the box. And we've got guys that can do it. I look at someone like Eze. We're talking about, is there a way we can make him a more prominent player other than when we're playing Spurs? I mean, he's someone I'd back from 20, 25 yards.
Rice, Saka,
Rice, definitely, yeah.
Odegaard. You know, we've seen those players score those goals before.
Gyokeres,
yeah, exactly. The one on
the casing off the ball. He's great at striking the shot.
Yeah. Well, something for the manager to consider. I'm sure that it's not something that he's unaware of at this point. Just while we're on this, Tom says Arsenal should look to recruit a long thrower as a top priority in the summer.
I disagree as a top priority. I agree if we can find that player who is not like Rory Delap, like total zero in possession, like we just hide him and only want him for long throws. Like, has to be like a good player as well. I have to say, I think that's reasonably rare. Yeah, that you find someone who's I've forgotten the name of the guy at Brentford who's
Michael Coyote.
That's it. Yeah, and actually Spurs have a guy as well who's injured at the moment. I can't remember his name.
No,
either.
Me neither. I don't care.
It's Tottenham. That's not information I need in my brain. But the thing is, like, long throws are such an amazing weapon. Like, when they're good, when they're rubbish, like the ones that we occasionally do, and thankfully I kind of think we've stopped doing, particularly because you stop the game for such a long time. I don't think it benefits. I don't think Arsenal's long throws are good enough to justify stopping a game for a minute, so that we get like a really loopy throw that just about hits the 18-yard area. Like, rubbish, don't do that. If you've got someone who's got like a Rory Delap style throw, or for those of you who haven't seen her, look up on YouTube. She's just retired, Irish international called Megan Campbell in women's football, who I promise you throws it further and harder than Rory Delap. It's incredible. Like, she can go halfway line to 6-yard line with that really flat trajectory. And actually, she got a couple of contracts on that basis, really, when perhaps, you know, as an outfield player, her value wasn't quite as high. So, you know, imagine being able to turn how many throw-ins there are a game and being able to turn any throw-in within 40 yards of the goal into a goal opportunity. Like, look at how we conceded at Brentford.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we'd have conceded any other way. And not only that, you can, and I think Arsenal do this a bit with corners, you can dock to the way you play a little bit as well to say, all right, we'll go on the outside and we'll keep getting throw-ins. Perhaps we don't invert our wingers. Perhaps we play, like, I don't know, Madueke on the left wing and he takes his guy on and we keep getting thrown. And, you know, you can do stuff like that. I'm just dubious about that kind of Goldilocks player who is both really good and has an amazing long throw that we can fit into our team really exists. Yeah,
I think it's really like an added bonus to a player if you find a good player who's a good footballer who fits the position and fits the style of your team, and they also have the ability to throw the ball really long. Then that's just sort of a bit of a icing on the cake when it comes to that player. But I don't think you go out and you scout that player and you say, well, he's not quite there in terms defensively, doesn't quite have the pace, doesn't quite have the technique, but he offsets that with a long throw. I don't know that's the way you recruit.
I guess one thing you could look at is, could that be like a squad player? Could that be... In fact, Christian Norgard has quite a good long throw. And does that come into your calculus if you need a goal with 10 minutes to go? Do you perhaps do something like, look, we're a goal down, there's 10 minutes to go, we've got the team pinned back, let's put Christian Norgard on for, like, I don't know, at centre-back or at right-back or something.
Or for Zubimendi even, you know.
Yeah, and just use him for his long throws as like an attacking weapon. I mean, our squad is so big, and I think we have some, like, redundancy in there, that we could perhaps go full NFL and have a squad player who sits on the bench, and, you know, that's part of his role.
Well, I mean, how do you view the sort of, again, it's a bit of a trend, and as you say, I think football corrects itself, and things, you know, don't always remain as effective as they were, but there'll be people who balk at the idea that long throws are part and parcel of the game. Like, the beautiful game should be played on the pitch. You know, what did was it Brian Clough who said, if God wanted the football to be played in the air, to put grass in the sky, something like that, some crazy fucking thing, anyway, like that. But I think for those who love the aesthetics of football, long throws are seen as a kind of industrial, Pulisian way of approaching the game, for want of a better term. But, you know, as Brentford have shown and as other teams have shown, if you're not trying to maximize every aspect of how the game can be played, you're diminishing your chances of getting results.
Yeah, I don't understand the purity argument over this at all. The only way I understand it is, they do hold the game up a bit, you know, and we do this from corners as well. Like, again, Rory Delap, the real kind of poster boy of all of this, every throw-in took like a minute, and a lot of that's deliberate as well. A lot of that is like, again, we do this from turn it into an event, get into the opposition's head. So I get it from a stoppage point of view. From a purity point of view, I don't understand it at all. Like, I don't understand how any throw-in, the most mundane thing that happens, boring thing that happens in a football match, where ostensibly you watch a guy with his hands over his head for 20 seconds going, he's marked, all to like progress the ball maybe 5 yards or get another throw in. Like, throw-ins are the most boring part of the game. So taking that and saying, actually, any throw-in we get 40, 50 yards from goal, we can turn into a goal-scoring opportunity. I think that's really exciting. Objectively speaking, I think Rory Delap's long throws were amazing athletic feat. Don't like giving that credit to a Stoke player, but genuinely incredible. I'd say the same about Megan Campbell in women's football as well. But like, it's horrible when it's your team under it. But there's a reason it's horrible. It's kind of exciting as well. So, like, for me, turning a throw-in from something that doesn't really achieve a lot into, I'm launching this into the 6-yard area, I think that's very exciting. I think that's good for the game, personally.
All right. America Arsenal says, winning a title with Pep coaching in the league would mean more than winning a title without Pep coaching in the league.
I'm going to slightly agree here. I think it's got a marginal kind of difference to it. Ultimately, bottom line, I don't care. And I don't think I don't think, let's say the worst happens. We don't do it this season. Pep goes, we do it next season when City are in transition and they've definitely finally been punished and have like a 60-point deduction or whatever, which will definitely all happen. You know, I'm not going to, when I'm in the middle of toasting that victory, I'm not going to go, it just doesn't mean as much without Pep. I do think, though, it's got like a little bit, like, for example, I was for my sins, I was listening to a podcast about Jose Mourinho yesterday, and, you know, they were talking about the season he actually won the league with Real Madrid, and that was against Pep's Barca. And, you know, they were saying that's got to be, like, maybe even privately, like the crowning moment of his career, that he would have got an awful lot of satisfaction over beating that team to a league title. You know, particularly someone like Mourinho, who defines himself by grievance anyway.
Yeah.
I'm sure privately Arteta would see a little bit more value in it, but ultimately I'm not sure anyone really cares that much, basically.
No, I mean, but look, the achievement would stand on its own one way or the other for me. I think there is probably something, though, if you are Arteta, if you are the players, you know, even I will say from my own perspective, do you see that stat going around during the week about how long Arsenal have spent top of the table in the last 4 years? I'm going to find it here. Andrew Allen sent it to me the other day. Since Arteta became Arsenal manager in December 2019, days top of the table, Mikel Arteta 481, Pep Guardiola 453, league titles 4 for Pep and none for Mikel Arteta. I do think, you know, if we do go the distance this season and if we do win it, there is just that, like, fuck, at last, fuck you. Yeah. At last, go fuck yourself, fuck you kind of element to it, and there's the whole master and pupil dynamic between Arteta and Guardiola as well, which I think is there. If somebody sort of beats you around the head time and time again, and you eventually land a knockout blow, you're going to enjoy that a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, and I don't think either certainly not on Arteta's part and even on Arsenal fans' part, I don't think that's like a grievance thing either. That's not like a Ferguson, Mourinho, like, I hate you and want to beat you. I don't get the impression that, Arsenal fans, I don't feel that much like animosity towards Pep. Part of that is because I acknowledge how brilliant he is. Mm-hmm. And obviously that's what this feels like. It's like Pep is a brilliant manager, and obviously Man City have got resources that no one else has. And they use them in certain ways, redacted. But like this, and also because again, no one really cares about Man City. Yeah, like he's not managing Chelsea, Man United, Tottenham. He's managing a team that ostensibly we don't really care about that much. So it feels like a purely sporting thing, and I think there's definitely merit in that. And I definitely think, I would give this team an enormous pat on the back. I think in all the kind of narrative around Arsenal have to win it. If they don't win it, they're the biggest bunch of bottlers ever. Sure. I think we do sometimes lose sight of what we're competing against. And I saw Tom Canton tweeted out yesterday, now that the financial results have been released, he said that Man City have spent over £800 million more on wages than Arsenal in the last 10 years. And I do think we are quite quick to dismiss who and what we're actually competing against.
That's true. And I think, whatever about transfer spend, I think the studies show that it's really about what you spend on wages that correlates to your final league position. The team that spends the most on wages tends to be the team that finishes towards the top of the table. Stephen Payne says there are too many statements and you won't read them all. Strongly disagree. There were too many. Not too many. There were loads, and we thank you for all of them. And I did read them all, but I'm just trying to find a nice balance between all of these. Boom shakalaka. Miles Lewis-Skelly will go on loan next season.
Yeah, I agree with this. I think he probably should, assuming that we sign Hincapié, which I think we might even be obliged to per the terms of the deal. I don't get the impression we're slowing down, like that we've got a Harvey Elliott situation where we don't want to play him and trigger any kind of agreement. So I think he probably will. I think he should. I've said many times I think the squad this season is probably a little bit too big, and we will see that rectify a little bit over the summer, and that's one of the areas where it's too big. I don't think we need 3 left backs, to be quite honest, and I don't even think there's really a route for Miles as a midfielder yet. Mm-hmm. Maybe if someone like Christian Norgard goes, but then you look at Christian Norgard, he's played 35 Premier League minutes this season. Like that's not how a 19-year-old's going to develop either. I have to say I'm getting a touch of the Smith Rose about Lewis-Skelly. It kind of feels like it's going in that direction. For me, I just don't think you sign another left back if the manager really, truly in his heart believes that this is the guy. So I hope he goes on loan as well, because I think that would be best for him. And then probably at the end of that, we assess how he does, because he might go somewhere and do absolutely brilliantly. And we think, do you know what? No, we need this player. But it feels like it might be about building value. Yeah. I think we have a bit of redundancy in our squad. That's one of the areas. I hope he stays. Obviously he has to stay this season, but hope he gets a Premier League winners medal, and then next season he goes out on loan somewhere in the Premier League and kills it. And then whatever happens from there, whether it's with Arsenal or elsewhere, I think this guy's got a great career ahead of him.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, he could go out on loan and come back and still be only 21 years of age, which, exactly. When you look at some of the players when they first came to Arsenal, Gabriel was 22, Odegaard was 21, 22, there's loads of time there for him. But I do think, it does speak maybe to a slight not lack of trust, but maybe personal preference on the part of the manager as regards what kind of profile of player he wants in those positions. Speaking of fullbacks, Kenyon Fjordkarst says, and I'm trying not to cry here, Ben White will be sold in the summer.
I agree. I think this might happen. Yeah, again, it would. Some of it will depend on the market, I think, because I think a lot of people are going to know if Arsenal are open to letting Ben White leave. They're going to know why. Basically, it's not going to be about the quality of the player. It's going to be about the fitness of the player. I think we've seen recently as well. I've seen a lot of like, why aren't we playing Ben White ahead of Timber? And it's a bit like, I think that's a fitness thing.
Of course.
And, you know, like when he does play at the moment, and I really feel for him on this, I'm not like, not having a go at him. It feels like he was mega durable, and now all of a sudden he's a player that, like, once he pushes past that 70-minute mark, the cramp sets in, the hamstrings tighten.
Yeah.
And I especially feel for him because I think that's probably a result of the fact that we had to overplay him because Timber got injured. And what we should have had was a really nice harmonious relationship between two amazing right backs. And instead what we've kind of had is we kind of had to play them both into the ground at various points because of the fitness of the other. And I look at Mascara being able to play right back pretty well. And Mascara's got a big Tomiyasu vibe to me, where he feels like the next man up in maybe 3 positions now in defence. And that might be because he's young and he kind of needs to develop and he's going to need some game time. And maybe that's a way of saying, actually, you're not past Gabriel and Saliba because that's a very difficult thing to do, but you're first man up for left centre-back, right centre-back and right back. We've also got Marley Salmon coming through as well, and he looks like a real talent as well. Obviously he's only 16, but like the way people are talking about him is that under 21 football is not good enough for him, and it's also complicated to send a 16 or 17-year-old on loan as well for myriad reasons around their education and things like that. And it's probably too early to be thinking about leaving home and stuff like that. So, you know, I think a mixture of Mascara and Salmon might mean that I don't think Arsenal would openly tout Ben White, but if a good offer came in, I could see them doing it. Yeah.
I mean, I think the thing with Ben White is the fitness thing you mentioned. There's a sort of match fitness element because he hasn't really been able to play on a consistent basis. I think when he has been on the bench and not used, people have raised eyebrows and said, well, why isn't he playing a bit more? But the fact that maybe he isn't playing a bit more when everyone can see Timber's been fatigued or certainly looking a little bit leggy probably tells you that there is an issue there, a fitness issue. Like, I don't believe for a second that Mikel Arteta doesn't trust Ben White, the footballer, but does he trust the body of Ben White? And ultimately, for me, it just comes down to the fact, I remember that interview Rob Holding did, where he said, that game against Newcastle, remember that horrible game towards the end of that season where we got beaten and we didn't get top 4 and it was all very disheartening. And we had no players. We had fucking nobody left, basically. And Ben White... Was that the game? Did Cedric get sent off in that game? Or
that was against Spurs.
That was against Spurs.
So he was suspended. That's how bad it was.
So we had nobody. And Rob Holding said Ben White played against Newcastle with like grade 2 hamstring tear or strain. And on the one hand, you're going, fuck, like... fair play, you know, we needed you. You put yourself out there. I remember maybe the second goal, was it? I can't remember, was Newcastle won 1-0 or 2-0?
It was an own goal or whether he just missed the ball stretching for it.
I think it was
kind of blanked it out.
Yeah, I'm trying not to. But you could see he couldn't properly run. Like, he was not at his best. And on the one hand, you're like, well, this is a guy who's putting his body on the line for Arsenal. But then you also have to ask the question, like, what are the long-term consequences of that? And I think what we've seen in recent times is Ben White is paying the price for his commitment to Arsenal and his commitment to the team and his desire to go out there and do a job if the manager asks him to do it. Like, it'll be a sad day because I think he's been, going back to that game against Brentford, and he'd signed from Brighton, and Arsenal were a bit of a mess that day. And there was a lot of focus on Ben White, like, oh, they've wasted 50 million quid on this guy, like, he looks terrible. I was like, hang on a minute, he proved everybody wrong. He became basically the best right back in the Premier League, certainly defensively. That combination, you could maybe talk about Trent Alexander-Arnold as an attacking force, but certainly the combination of being able to defend and attack, and if we could have the halcyon days of Odegaard, White and Saka for this run-in, we'd all love that, wouldn't we? But that's not possible.
He can do things as well that Timber can't. I think for me, in an ideal world, that would still be a pretty 50-50 relationship between the two. But also, his kind of Instagram thing where he's like, I'm not injured. Like, he strikes me as that type of character, that it's like, I might actually be injured, but I'm going to tell you I'm not injured because, and that's like a big testament to his character. Maybe someone needs to have a word in his ear and just be like, look, if your hamstring's tight, don't do it type thing. I'd broach one more thing as well quickly, because I hadn't seen you mention this on the blog. He did an Insta video for Arsenal, right, about a month ago about his dogs. About how much he loves dogs, and he has German Shepherds. And were you behind that content? Like, if it had a David Bowie soundtrack, it would be like the most you-coded piece of content I've ever seen.
It was just coincidence, I promise. It was like when Clive got to interview Martin Odegaard for the new contract. You remember that? I was like, I feel like they missed the trick here. They could have had me going on a walk with Ben White and German Shepherds. It would have been perfect. Anyway, listen, let's hope that Ben White can play a part between now and the end of the season. Let's do a few quick ones before we go. John Cross. I don't think it's that one, particularly as this is his statement. Punditry is ruining football.
Disagree. It's probably making it a bit more stressful, and it's difficult to escape that ecosystem. I would say if you're still on Twitter, for example, just don't go on the For You tab, for example, and just try and ignore it. I know it's difficult, but I wouldn't say it's annoying, undeniably. It's undeniably making things noisier and more stressful. However, I'd say there is quite a lot of choice out there. There's lots of good punditry. But there's more than I can listen to, like good football podcasts and things like that out there. So I'd say it will ruin it if you let it, basically.
Sure. I mean, maybe that's more aligned with sort of match day punditry, right? So what you're being given by TNT or Sky Sports versus if you actually want to go out there and listen to good stuff like, good analysis, good tactical breakdowns, like we do on Arseblog, but also somebody like Adrian Clark, who's got his YouTube channel now, which I think is really, really good. That is good punditry. It's out there. But of course, when you're inflicted with Gary Neville every fucking game, I understand why people get a bit frustrated by that. Jamie Phillips, Max Dowman will score his first Premier League goal this season.
Disagree. I just think our attack's so stacked. I can't, unless there's a massive injury crisis, and when has that ever happened to Arsenal? I don't see. I think he's capable. I think if he gets 30 or 40 minutes of football, I think he probably will. I'm just dubious that he will get that because the attack's so stacked, and obviously we're coming into a part of the season where it's very difficult to rely on a 16-year-old, isn't it? So I don't see it, and I kind of hope I don't see it, because I think the treatment room would be very busy if that's happened.
I agree. I would say potentially he's more likely to score a Champions League goal than a Premier League goal, because we can have more players on the bench and he's going to be part of those squads, and there's a kind of like, well, Hail Mary, we need to do something a little bit different than the opposition don't expect. Maybe there's more room for Max Dowman there, but I think you're right. Like if things go the way we want in the Premier League, I suppose the thing you might say is that if things do go the way we want in the Premier League, there might be a couple of games at the end of the season
Yeah.
You know, where it's like Max Dowman and Marley Salmon combining for a winning goal. You know, that helps. Yeah, that helps send, or maybe even against West Ham, to send Tottenham down. Let me just do this one because I thought it was quite an interesting one to consider. Lockie, they say the 2006 World Cup in Canada, United States and Mexico, they use a slightly unfortunate acronym for that, which I don't need to go into. They say that World Cup will have the worst vibes in World Cup history.
Strongly agree. Strongly agree.
Potentially it could be crazy.
I think Qatar had quite bad vibes because of the conversation around it. Mm-hmm. I think the conversation around this will be similar. And I think the thing that's kind of different about this World Cup is from the USA perspective, who are doing most of the hosting, their politics, their government aren't trying to hide things. Maybe they're not. Well, in fact, I kind of think they are trying to put on a show to the world, but I think it kind of is going to be a bit, all the stuff you've been reading about is kind of true. Like, I think that's what makes this one unique, perhaps from a geopolitical perspective, that, the person in charge of the country either doesn't care or will actually see it as an opportunity to, as shall we say, a show of strength. So I think that will make it, don't get me wrong, I do think the vast majority of people, when it comes around, will sit and watch football. I think I probably won't that much, and I think the time zone thing helps that. I don't see myself getting up at 2:00 in the morning that often. And there'll be a lot of dead rubber games as well in the group stage, and therefore some of the stuff around the tournament, shall we say, will kind of be the only real talking point. It will probably vanish a bit when we get into the final stages. I dread to think like the final and the bloody trophy presentation, like thinking about like how Infantino might debase himself.
You get Joe Rogan on the pitch to fucking present the trophy or something,
Like I think it's all on the table. So I think it could be, but then I wasn't around for stuff like Argentina 78 and
I was too young. I mean, I was too young to understand what was going on there. It's kind of been a running theme through many World Cups, And
Olympics. There is a theme because a lot of these countries tend to want to host things for those kind of soft power reasons as well. And generally sport will take the money and do it. And I think this FIFA president in particular, like, It's really taken something to be worse than Sepp Blatter, but I think this guy's managed it.
Oh, absolutely. Like, Sepp Blatter was corrupt as hell, and FIFA has been corrupt as hell for a long time, but this, Infantino's taken it to a new level. I think he's actively a harmful presence to football and to the world in general, to be honest. So I think that is part of the backdrop of this World Cup. Anyway, to take us out on a more upbeat note, Simon King, and this is the one that I think, everybody's talking about, says David Raya's true end game is the return of the mustache ponytail combo that underpinned Arsenal's late 90s dominance.
Strongly agree.
Yes.
Strongly agree.
Come on, David.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I imagine... that guy could grow a hell of a moustache, I think, and I think he owes us that to see that. There's something. I think it might be a little bit generative AI, so I don't know how much I should enjoy or plug it. But like, someone has been posting these, like, Arsenal players as if they were like mid-80s.
Oh yes, yeah. I've seen a couple of those.
Like Saka with an afro and there's like Declan Rice with like a little kind of pencil moustache and a mullet and all of that. I think that has to be the culmination of us retaining the title next year. David Raya, long flowing locks, big old moustache, Declan Rice mullet. So when Declan's hair grows out a little bit, I want that. I want those sides shaved off, get rid of those sideburns, type haircut. Let's really lean into the kind of 80s vibe.
Yeah,
definitely.
I'm just looking for Raya to come out starting next season in one of those just gigantic, big, puffy goalkeeper shirts that David Seaman used to wear. I was going to call him David Seaman, but that sounds wrong on many levels, right? Listen, we better leave it there. Tim, thank you very much indeed. As always, great to talk to you, and we'll chat again soon.
Yeah, my pleasure as always. Thanks.
Thank you very much indeed to Tim. You can find him in all the usual social media places and, of course, here on Arseblog.com. His new column drops today at 1 p.m. Irish time, so that means by the time many of you listen to this, it will be out now. So go read it on Arseblog.com. There's also a brand new Arsenal Women Arsecast, Tim and Jamie taking your questions in a mailbag edition. That is also out now and in all the usual podcast places. So that's about that for today's show. Obviously, there is a big game at the weekend. We're taking on Chelsea, looking for another 3 points in a London derby as we continue our title challenge. Fingers crossed there, but we'll talk about that game in a bit more detail tomorrow or maybe Saturday morning. I'm not quite sure which yet. Over on Patreon, as we always do, we'll have a Premier League preview podcast for you. That, among all the other stuff that we do on Patreon, will set you back $6 a month plus VAT or sales tax if that is applicable where you happen to be, but you get access to everything that we do on Patreon for, well, less than the price of a pint. At this point, the pint has got more expensive. The Patreon subscription has not. So, I'll leave it up to you guys. Do you want the pint or do you want the Patreon? Or you can have both if you want. Anyway, patreon.com/Arseblog is where you go to sign up for that. As ever, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing and downloading and sharing and all those things. It's always a pleasure to be here with you every week. For now, though, take it easy and we will catch you on the next one. Until then, cheers. Bye-bye.